I'm Doris Carson Williams, President and Chief Executive Officer of the African American Chamber of Commerce. Our mission, to continuously improve business opportunities for African American business owners and professionals and all small businesses in our region. We are pleased to present this, our candidates forum, to provide you an opportunity before the election to learn more about the candidates. As always, I am thrilled to say that Rod Doss, the managing editor for the New Pittsburgh Courier, will be conducting the candidates forum. And Rod, I'm turning it over to you.
All right. Yay. Thank you, Doris. Good evening, everyone. It is great to be here at another candidates forum. I'm sure you'll find it very interesting because we are in the hub of a great deal of activity both in the city of Pittsburgh and the county of Allegheny. So we will get to it. Let me just explain our little format because it's going to be a little different this time around because we have 3 segments that we're going to deal with. The first segment will deal with the county exec race, and I will call them up in a minute. The second segment will deal with the district attorney candidate. We only have one candidate here for that. And then we will close out with the introduction of all of our council candidates so that we bring those up as well. Also, there will be questions from you in the audience. You will find paper and pen at your seat, and that will give you an ample opportunity to listen to what's being said and come up with your own question. And if you're lucky enough, I might even ask you. So we'll see. Let's begin by asking our 2 candidates for county exec to come up. We will start with the Honorable Rich Fitzgerald, who is the incumbent endorsed candidate for Democratic candidate for county exec. And we have Matt Gross, Republican candidate for county exec. Thank you for coming. All right, I'm going to let you both offer a 2-minute opening statement so everybody gets a chance to hear why you're running, who you are, and what this is all about. We will begin with county exec.
Well, thank you. Thanks, Rod. I want to thank
There is a mic right there if you need the board closer.
Thank you, and I want to thank Doris and the Chamber for putting this on. You know, when I ran 8 years ago, one of the things that I really talked about was trying to make sure we could keep our young people, because I think for so many decades, starting with the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, parents were resigned to the fact that when their kids grew up here and graduated from whatever school they went to, they were probably going to leave because we didn't have opportunities for our young people. They didn't want to leave, but the opportunities weren't here. We see now we're one of the fastest growing millennial populations in the country. A lot of our young people are staying. We're actually having more young people that are moving here because there's a diversity of opportunities in robotics and in energy and in finance and in medicine and in, you know, all the things that we're doing here in Allegheny County. At the same time, we wanted to make sure we held the line on taxes, and I'm proud of the fact that of the last 17 years, the last 18 years, we've only raised property taxes 1 time. In fact, with respect to purchasing power, it actually goes down a little bit every year because we don't adjust for inflation. But at the same time, we've invested in our infrastructure. We've paved more miles of roads in the last 3 years than we had in any 3-year period in decades. Our bond rating's the highest it's been since 1983. And we had a fund balance that was only around $5 million, our rainy day fund, and now it's almost $50 million. So we have some stability in our ability to do things. We've also made improvements at the airport, with our Port Authority, with our community college, but we still have a lot of work to do because some of our communities haven't seen all the growth that we've seen in some of our, the city and some of the inner ring suburbs that are starting to take off again. So anyway, that's my opening statement.
Great.
Thank you.
All right.
Hey, hi. Thanks for all of you for showing today. My name is Matt Rose. I served on County Council for 8 years, kept a low budget, you, was on the finance committee and many other areas that served us with a lot of concerns about Allegheny County. I also served at the Pentagon during 9/11. I was taken away, served for 3 chairmen of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, as well as the Secretary of Defense, and I helped to craft Homeland Security. I know how and why and what we need to do to protect our people from these terrific actions that are going on in our county. The reason why I run, this county has lost population. 8,000. Now, I have a proven track record of bringing jobs into this region. I served for an organization that brought 20,000 jobs into this region. That's documentable, and over $1 billion in investments. And I believe that we need to do more, that we're losing. Also, I believe I protected you. I'm one of you. I really am in this chamber. I'm a VOSB, better known small business. And like you, I have to march to the drummer in a lot of these bids that we see coming down the line. And we'll talk more about that as we go on in this meeting today. But I believe that there has to be much more vision in Allegheny County. We have to be more aggressive. They're going across the border. Look at it. It's going to Washington. It's going up to north. As that base shrinks, so does our tax base go up for us to carry, those of us that are left behind. And I think that opportunities have to be developed for you, the small business, and give you those opportunities and make it a level, fair playing field, unlike what we're seeing in this paper today. We need to have a level, fair playing field so that people like you and your people and also any small businesses like us are going to have the opportunity to really be serious and not get scraps off the table. And that's what should be important to you today. And I'll leave that right now. And by the way, I was homeschooled, worked my way through Duquesne University, took a 53F from Munhall. I was born and raised in the Still Valley, one of 6 kids, and took that bus every day to Duquesne University. And squeezed my way through. And also then went on for a master's in business. And where my hard knocks was learned working with people, with you and others. Thank you.
Thank you both, gentlemen. This is Doris's forum, and there are 2 questions that she requires to be asked. Okay? Yeah, you know they are. I'm going to put it to you both to answer. I'll read them both at the same time because they're intertwined. What has been your involvement to advance African American business owners and professionals? That's number 1. And the second is, what will you do if elected to advance African American business owners and professionals moving to the next level of engagement? And you both can answer conversationally or as you wish, or go right ahead.
Go ahead. Okay. First and foremost, I always work with African Americans in my VOSB. I bid on a contract out in the western part of the country, and I found a minority African American business that was going to partner with me. I trusted him to do that with me in a bid that we were going to do. So anytime I have the opportunity, I do that. You know, I look for the minorities and African-owned business and woman-owned. Very important. Secondly, what we have to do in Allegheny, how about PLAs? You should not support any candidate that supports a PLA. It's Project Labor Agreement. You know, I'm not anti-union. Not at all. I support the philosophy in a way. I support what they do in the way they do the best training programs in this country.
What is a PLA?
I'm going to explain that. Thanks, brother. And here's what let me turn this off. Here's what a PLA does, and I fought against it. Let me just get rid of this. That's my fiance, but we can't take it. This lady's going to be mad at me. I'm going to tell you right now. No, she's great. Anyhow, she's a small business owner too. She's a nurse practitioner. Anyhow, PLA is a Project Labor Agreement. These were put in place by most labor organizations. A lot of the agencies and a lot of the organizations affiliated with Allegheny County they have union membership, which is fine. We want to see what labor has to say. No problem with that. Where the problem is when they try to squeeze in a PLA. What's a PLA? In order for you to bid. How many of you here have got a big contract with the county? 2.5% of minorities and women have got some of these contracts in Allegheny County. And one of the big reasons why you don't get the big part is because of Project Labor Agreements. Al-Qassam took a higher bid because of a PLA, $175,000 more The lower bidder does all the streetlights for the city of Pittsburgh, but they couldn't do it because they didn't have a project labor agreement, meaning send their labor to the union hall or draw from the union hall. I have no problem with whether it's union or non-union. Let's do a level playing field. So what that does to you as a small minority or small veteran-owned or woman-owned, it discriminates against you. You don't have the same opportunity. And any candidate that's running for office, you ought to ask them, and you shouldn't support them. If you really believe in the principles that you believe in as a small business, that you shouldn't support any candidate that supports the PLA. It's not right.
Do you have a response on that one? Yeah, what he's saying?
Yeah, one of the things I've been very proud of is the fact that we have seen growth in African-American businesses, particularly small businesses in the region. We've seen growth in business across the board because of all the opportunities that are happening right now. Our unemployment right now is 3.6%, the lowest it's been since 1970, almost a half a century. I'm proud of the fact that during my time as county executive, we've hired 3,500 employees. 25% of them have been African American. That's almost double the population of 13% in Allegheny County. At some of the very top levels of management in my administration, we've got a lot of diversity, and we'll continue to do that. I'm proud of the fact that one of the very first African American to serve as the public defender, Elliot Housey, who we appointed when we became county executive, was just appointed to the Court of Common Pleas, the first time we've had an African American maybe to the bench in Allegheny County in over a decade. And we've been rated in some of the publications as one of the top 10 places to start a business if you are a minority. So these opportunities that are opening up, we want to make sure they open up across the spectrum. And we see even in our building trades, we see an improved outreach to reach minority candidates who are now becoming apprentices. They become in the building trades, and then many of them do start their own businesses as plumbers or electricians, etc. So we need to just provide opportunities for everybody, whether you're a software engineer, whether you're in a medical field, whether you're an entrepreneur selling in retail or restaurant. We've seen a burgeoning increase in the amount of restaurants in our hospitality industry that's growing very, very quickly. So again, across the spectrum, we want to provide opportunities for all, and I think we've seen that kind of growth in the African American community.
Thank you. This question is for you, Mr. County Exec. Despite a booming economy, the county has been losing population, though at less than 5%, 0.5%. Your opponent has said that that loss is due to tax burdens. How do you respond to that?
Well, actually, Allegheny County has only raised property tax one time in the last 17 years, while other counties around us have gone much higher than that. We actually see an increase in new construction. We see an increase in housing. We're going to find out at the end of the century, at the end of the decade, when we do the census, where we are. My sense is we are growing again. There are probably parts of the county that are still suffering from the deindustrialization, particularly in some of our Mon Valley towns that are further away from the urban core. But what you see happening in the city right now and in our inner ring suburbs, not just in the Strip District and Lawrenceville and Garfield and East Liberty, the Hill District, Uptown, a lot of growth, a lot of new construction, a lot of new housing, a lot of new people coming in. We saw an increase last year in birth rates in some of our, and obviously some of our hospitals. So my sense is we are growing again, but I guess we'll find that out once the census numbers are taken at the end of the decade.
Okay, Red, you can respond.
I don't go by sense. I go by statistics. When I put forth a motion or anything that I do my homework. I do the stats. The stats speak for itself. 8,000, lost in population per year. That's fact. The fact of the matter is, in minorities and women in Allegheny County, we talk about where they're included. Chelsea, you don't have to read me. Read this article with Chelsea Wagner's audit. 2.5% contracts were awarded to women and minorities in Allegheny County. That's disgusting. Think of it. Even with the percentage that you have in population in Allegheny County, minorities and women, the majority of women, 60% of the voters are women. Where's that percentage? It's way out. It don't weigh out to me. There's no vision here. And we talk about taxes. I don't buy the fact that, we're going to have to attract more and more industries and more people to live in Allegheny County. I wouldn't be content with saying, we're gonna have a level tax all the time. I task my people. Our people need to be tasked, they need to be walked, run, talked to, worked, and encouraged. I would give them the task, let's look at cutting the millage by 1 mil in 2 years. At the same time, keep our people in place and enhance the quality of delivery of our services. I think we can do that. I think there are many, many ways to do that. I saw that. Anytime I put forth anything on council, I did my homework. I had it. How about that ridiculous tunnel under the river? This administration supported it. I didn't. I couldn't vote on it. I would never vote for that. The comment was always, if we don't take this, we'll never get anything else. All right? You know what they're saying in Washington? You got yours. You got yours. It's in that river. No, we can't probably get anything else. It's a $100 million shot in the river. So nobody fought to see if those funds, they said it couldn't be changed. But I didn't see a lot of fight there. I always brought up, never voted for that part of the budget because of that. It was a ridiculous thing. We need other things in Allegheny County. By the way, prisons are swelling. A lot of them for young people. We'll talk about that further in the election too. I've always talked about that.
Why don't we talk about it right now? Go ahead.
You want me to go first, or you want Mr. Fitzgerald to go
Go right
first?
ahead. And he can jump in.
When we had 200,000 more population in Allegheny County, we had 400 prisoners. Now, Mr. Lakina quoted this to me. We stood in that corner up there and pointed to that building. Now with 200,000 less population in Allegheny County, we got 2,800. Our costs have gone from, I don't know where they are now, but when I was on council, I always pointed out 20 million to 50 million. That's the cost. And that doesn't include the health care now. If you want to get an infusion or you want to get a replacement or an organ, you go to the prison. But the fact of the matter is a lot of them are young people and they're African American and inner city. 85% are there for drug and alcohol, and you know what comes back? 60% of them come back. I went into the inner city schools to learn more about it. Not for money. I went into substitute teaching because I wanted to find out, and I taught in just about every school there was, including the alternate schools. And I'm going to tell you right now, a lot of them are young people. A lot of them that are having difficulties are minorities. You know, they are. There's no mentorship. There's a lot of home life that we need to address. But everybody looks on me when I talk about this and looks at me in council. Okay, next. Not next. Now.
Do you have a response to what he's been saying?
Yeah, we've actually seen a pretty significant reduction in our jail population. It was 2,800 a number of years ago. It's now, I think, 2,200. Again, I credit a lot of that to Elliott Housing, reforming the public defender's office to get people seen immediately within 24 hours of an arrest. So they were seeing an attorney, getting through the system much more quickly so that they're not languishing in the jail. Mr. Harper, Warden Harper, has programs in the jail which help with job training, machinist, GED, etc. So these are some of the things that we need to continue to improve upon. We try to work with the courts, work with the district attorney, work with folks to do things like no cash bond, no cash bail, so that when folks do get in trouble, that they can at least be left on their own recognizance before the trial comes up. And we see some improvements along those lines. We were awarded a MacArthur grant. I was proud of the fact that we've been able to do that with our Human Service Department and some of the things that we're continuing to do. There's more work to be done. We know in this country that we incarcerate way too many people. It's a national problem that we have. It's a problem we have here in the state of Pennsylvania. We were glad to even say that, if they were going to close one of the prisons, that one of the prisons that Governor Wolf and his team were going to close was our prison, the SCI Pittsburgh, the old Western Penn that we've known for years. So I think, there's new ways of dealing with this issue, and we need to continue to do that. And I want to continue to work with our friends in the courts, our friends in the district attorney's office, and others to try to make sure that happens.
Thank you. I want to start with you on this, County Exec, on this question. It comes from the audience. Pretty good question. What is your position on supporting affordable housing within the city of Pittsburgh in communities where African American, low-income families are being pushed out, but are the same families that stayed and supported these communities when growth was stagnant?
Well, one of the things that we've done, we instituted a policy where if you're going to get, and it's not just in the city, it just depends what neighborhood it is, but in burgeoning neighborhoods, that are starting to come back. If you're gonna get tax increment financing, or you're gonna need an alerta, for us to support that at the county level, you have to provide a certain percentage, sometimes 10%, sometimes 20%, depending on the amount that you get in tax subsidy of affordable housing. So we've seen where in some neighborhoods, we've seen that happen. We don't want to stunt development. We're appreciative of what's happened in neighborhoods like Garfield, the neighborhood that I grew up in, or East Liberty, or Lawrenceville, where we've seen the market start to take off and do well. One of the things I'm proud of the fact is that if you bought that home 20 years ago, you're one of those people that stayed. Guess what? The home value that you've been paying that mortgage on for the last 20 years has gone up. So the biggest thing that most people have as an investment is their home. That's their ability to create wealth for them and their families. And I'm proud of the fact that for people who live in some of those neighborhoods and bought those homes 20 years ago or 25 or 30 years ago and have been paying that mortgage every month, they've been living in that community, they've been supporting that community, they're reaping the rewards of what's happening in some of those neighborhoods because their wealth has gone up that they can use for their retirement, for their kids' education, or to pass on to their families.
But the question really goes to being pushed out. I think that's really the intent of the question, that the families being pushed out.
If you own your home, you're not being pushed out. Who's pushing you out?
Some of the developers are taking over the properties.
Well, no. If you own your property, you're not being forced out.
Okay. Lonely, let's hear what you have to say.
Yeah, some are being pushed out, that's a fact. When you look at the Hill, what's happened there in the development and that, it's just moving that way. It's going down toward home, now it's going to be Homewood, Brushton, those areas, it is. You see those developments that are going out there, you got to try to rent an apartment out there. Try and rent an apartment. I mean, you're going to pay it through the nose. So we got to be very careful of that. And the percentages have to be enforced, as well as anybody that's going to have their property. Why should you be selling at such a lower level, because you're being pushed on, so to speak. If you're going to sell your property, you ought to be able to sell it at a marketable rate if it's someone on that area, and if they want to, not by taking over the property by forcing to do that. So there are a lot of communities that have been forced on. There's no doubt. I lived in the north side one time. I love the north side. My neighbors were minorities, white, different ethnic groups like me, and I saw, the development. I always was very careful. And I hated to see, I remember one gentleman, JD, he wanted to move. And he says, will you buy one? I said, no, I'm not gonna. I said, you move, I like you, JD. He says, I want to move. I want to go out in the country to raise chickens. I said, oh, geez. But my point is that they are being squeezed out. It happens. And we can't let that happen at the expense of those people who live in those communities. We've got to protect those communities. We've got to protect those people. They got to realize the fair value. But if anybody says it's not being pushed out, better take a look again. You better take a quick, hard look again, because it's happening.
There is also the issue that partially was raised by the county exec, that you have wealth in your property. There are certain communities where that property value has gone down drastically. Certain communities like Homewood, they have gone through the floor. And there's no real intrinsic value there in terms of property. So how do you respond to that?
Well, and that, you bring up a good point, because in some neighborhoods, and not necessarily just in the city, but I see a lot of it in some of our factory towns that haven't seen some of the reinvestment that we've seen in, again, some of our city neighborhoods. In those areas, that's a very difficult thing. That's where you have to bring development into those communities so that there is a desirability for a market that is created. That's what's happened in East Liberty. That's what's happened in Lawrenceville, where now people want to live there. They're creating a demand for those houses and for those properties, and those things, are going up. One of the things we do need to worry about, though, is the renter. The renter does have a more of a vulnerability when the owner of the property raises the rent. So those are some of the things that we need to look at when we look at affordable housing. And we've provided a number of residences over the years, and we'll continue to do that using some of the tax credits that are available from our state and federal government. Those are the kind of programs we've got to have. We've got to have a mix. You've got to have a mix of market rate and a mix of affordable to create a good, strong community. And those are some of the things that, again, through the policies we've done in economic development, places like the Strip District, the North Shore, South Side, the hilltop communities like Beltsuber and Allentown, where you're starting to see investment come in there as quality of life is increasing. You've got the coffee shops and the bistros and the young people that are moving into those neighborhoods and revitalizing, some of these communities that are moving forward.
You have a response?
Yeah, it's not a response, it's, I don't want to criticize Mr. Fitzgerald, but one thing I think needs to be done. I've seen a lot of development that came through because I sat on that committee. And the thing that we did, and that's both of our responsibilities that we should have done more, not just his, mine too. And what it is I never saw where we said, what's the impact on the community? We didn't, meaning the impact on the people living in that community. It wasn't as strong as it should have been. We should have been doing more impact studies on what happened to those people, and where are they going to migrate if they migrate, and they have to migrate, they have to move. Where are they going to move, how are they going to move? And it wasn't always there. It just wasn't there. And it's a good point, a good question that you're bringing up, and it has to be dealt with. And I think this is something, whether I'm in this office or he's in this office, it needs to be addressed. There's no doubt about it. Wherever this happens in any development, it has to be addressed, and it should be an integral part of that plan that developer brings in. He has to have a good analysis of what's going to happen and affect that community. It hasn't been before when I was there that much. There was good things that happened, don't get me wrong, in development, but that doesn't mean, just because it's a good development, doesn't mean it's a good thing for the community.
Thank you. Here's another question from the audience. As county exec, how would you help fund or get funds to help train police enforce, not force, or the don't shoot training instead of once a year?
Well, we do training at the Allegheny County Police Academy, but one of the issues we have in this community is the disparity in tax base. We have 130 municipalities, many of which have a tax base that are able to afford the type of training, the type of resources that can be available for our police departments. And there are some, and we've seen obviously over the last year in some of our communities, where they just don't have the ability to pay. They don't have the tax base to be able to not only pay the police officers a living wage, a decent wage, but also the amount of training that goes into this. I'm proud of the fact that some of the folks that are actually in Harrisburg were working on this. People like Austin Davis, the State Representative Austin Davis from McKeesport, who was my executive assistant for 6 years, is leading the fight with people like Representative Gainey and Senator Costa and others to talk about these issues on some of the I would call them antiquated laws that need to be changed on your responses with firearms for our law enforcement. So these are some of the things that I think we're going to continue to do. Now, the county, just to be clear, doesn't have the ability to tell any of the municipalities how to do their policing. It's just not, we just don't have the legal authority to do that. We can be someone who assists, and we're glad to assist, but in essence, these 130 municipalities are independently elected entities that basically get to set their own policies and how many police officers are going to be on the street and what type of budget they put in and what type of training they're going to have.
That leads to another follow-up question, if you will. I see the merging of police departments is occurring. Want to respond to what's happening there?
I'm a big proponent of that. I think we've seen some success over the years of some of the merging of police departments that has happened. We saw it up in the North Hills with some of the northern regional folks in there. We've seen it out in the Ohio Township area with a number of police departments in the Ohio Valley that have come together. We're starting to see it now in the eastern suburbs where you've got Whitaker and North Braddock and Rankin and East Pittsburgh that are coming together to create a merged police force. As some of these towns have lost population and lost tax base, but they still have the same amount of road miles and the same amount of streets to patrol. Trying to come together using economies of scale and using some consolidation, I think, is a really, really positive aspect. We want to be supportive of that at the county level. I think it's also great that some of our state leaders, like Senator Brewster, who represents a lot of those areas out there, Representative Courts, also have come together to try to make sure that, maybe there's some state help that can be used in some of the resources there for our police departments.
Thank you. Well,
Thanks. I walked in their shoes. I started as an E1 private in the Army as a military policeman and worked my way up through the ranks to become a lieutenant colonel. Did a lot of security issues. And with the training, it's a train-the-trainer concept, and I don't think there's enough of that. I think we have to really look at who's training these people and how they're training and how they were trained. So, for instance, you only, in the military and the police, you don't use deadly force, only when necessary. You only use what force is necessary. You wouldn't take down a fleeing felon unless you really felt that your life is in danger. So you have to walk in their shoes. A lot of our young people, and we have to go back to the root causes of what's happening here, and especially it's in the minority, African American minority neighborhoods. A lot of young people, they don't, you look at their home life, it's really tough. I wouldn't want to go to some of those homes. I have friends, they were born and raised in great homes, and whether they're minorities or not. And we have to look at where the root causes are to try to help. But getting back to the police segment, what was the first part of that question? I wanted to address that.
training and getting the funds to help train police not to shoot.
We have to gear that, and I believe in the regionalization like Mr. Fitzgerald does, because when you do that, you have better training. You have more broad training. We have to include, in fact, I tell you, we have such a large Allegheny County police force. I think a lot of the Allegheny County police force should be trained to be able to go into these. There's so many municipalities, they aren't well trained, a lot of them. They don't know how to respond. And they're gonna maybe do the same thing that happened before. It could very well happen. So we gotta make sure that it doesn't happen, and that means that our people that are doing the training have to be better equipped to do that. And we have to look at the root causes of what's causing our young people. There's drugs out there right now. I said that before. Look at these heroin drugs out there now. Look what's happening to them. A lot of young people getting into the wrong areas. We got, what's lost in a lot of the African American communities, as well as the more of the poor communities within the city and the county. You know what's missing? That community, that YMCA. A lot of those things are taken out of there. They don't have any place to go. Where are they going to go? They're going to go in the corner. They're going to see people and they're going to talk to people. You were there. You know what I'm talking about. If they don't have the mentorship or they don't have the places to go, they're going to go on the streets at night. That's what's going to happen. So we got to look at the root causes as well as getting back to the police. We got to make sure they're well trained. And we got to make sure we got to avert anything from that happening again. And especially
All right, thank you. This will be the last segment. The end of the first segment. After we hear a 1-minute closing statement from each candidate, we'll start with you, Mr. Connie.
Thank you. I want to again thank the Chamber for having the forum here tonight. I'm proud of the fact that we've moved Allegheny County in a very positive way over the last 8 years. And if you're kind enough to give me another 4 years, I want to continue to work on your behalf to continue to move this county forward. There's two real things I really think we got to work on in a big way in the next couple. Haven't had the opportunities to have some of the economic growth that's happening on a macro level, but always isn't there on a micro level. In transportation, we've got to continue to improve transportation so that where these jobs are happening, whether it's at the cracker plant, whether it's at the airport, whether it's in Oakland, whether it's in wherever it might be, that people can get to those jobs, because there's a lot of jobs out now that are unfilled. So those are two challenges that all of us working together have to do. And one of the things I'm most proud of is bringing people together, working with Mayor Peduto, working with our federal officials, working with Governor Wolf, our congressional delegation, the Chamber, the Pittsburgh Chamber, the African American Chamber, our labor community, our universities, our foundations, all of us working together. It's what we do well as Pittsburghers, and I want to continue doing that over the next 4 years.
Thank you.
The proof of the pudding, again, is where we stand today in Allegheny County. It's more of a status quo. It's more of a caretaker relationship. I believe in term limits. I don't think I should be in that position 1 or 2 terms. I don't think you should either. I don't think anybody should, anywhere in any office. We need new ideas. We need new people. It runs out, it becomes stagnant. It opens the door for things that you really mess up, and you don't get new ideas, and you stymie new ideas. This is not an ego position. This is something that we have to look at who we are serving, and I mean serve. We don't work for, we serve you. That's what we do, and that's what it should be about. And I believe I'll have more vision. I'll have more strategic planning, by the way. I didn't see any strategic planning when I was in Allegheny County. We talk about land use, but we didn't talk about strategic planning, of where we're going. And involve the communities too, of where they're going, and where they want to go, and what they want to do. None of that's happening. Have you seen it in your communities? That should be involved. We had good land use. Yeah, we went into the communities. Here's the land use. But where do we want to go? Where do we want to take this county in the future? And by the way, I'm not the best expert, neither is Mr. Fitzgerald. I want to gather the best. You see what I'm saying? I told my people when I was in the military, why duplicate the wheel? Go find out who has something better. Do you realize Allegheny County, the statistics are really bad for Allegheny County? Take a look yourself. Where we are, this county is really stacked up bad throughout the United States in comparison to other counties. Find out who has the best. You know what the top 10 cities in this country are? One is only near here, Columbus. Has anybody went and go talk to Columbus to see what they're doing? Huh? So that's what I think we need to do. I think we need that vision, we need the planning, we need benchmarking. We want to find out who's doing it well and do it as well, at least as well as they are doing, and maybe we can do better. But I should only be there 2 terms, and anybody should be in here 2 terms, and any offices should be in 2 terms. No more. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you both. Give them all a hand. Thank you very much. We have Deron Jenkins here with us, running as a Democratic candidate for district attorney. His opponent chose not to show up, so we will do the best we can with getting him to enunciate some of the thoughts in the absence of the opposition. First, we will begin with his opening statement, and that's 2 minutes. John, he's going to clock you for 2 minutes. You can begin with your opening statement.
Certainly. My name is Deron Jenkins. I am a candidate for the District Attorney's Office here in Allegheny County. I've been working in the criminal justice system for almost the past 14 years. I've done social work, I've been a public defender, I've been a prosecutor, I've been a law professor. There isn't too much within the criminal justice system that I don't have firsthand knowledge of because of my experience. There's been a nationwide discussion about criminal justice reform, not just here in Allegheny County, but throughout the area. And you can't have these discussions about criminal justice reform without discussing the district attorney's office. And what I mean by criminal justice reform, how we treat people that come through the criminal justice system. I believe we could do a better job of doing it. One of the primary premises of my campaign is treating people like people. I don't just talk about change and progress. My track record, my experience speaks to that. One of the first things that I did when I came to the public defender's office, I identified the population at the jail, people that are in jail, pre-trial, have been convicted of anything, they're waiting for trial. We identified that population, most of which are low-level, non-violent offenders, a lot of victimless crimes. And we had the attorney file motions to get them out of jail, because if you spend any time in jail, the collateral consequences that come with that can be very insurmountable. You're away from your family, you're away from your job, you're away from your school, and you're supposed to be innocent until proven guilty. So I made it a point to identify that population. Before I left the public defender's office, we also added social workers. I was of the opinion that if our office didn't do things to help people get their lives put back on track, nobody was going to do it. So I'm proud to say that before I left that office, there are now full-time social workers in that office, something that has never been done before. I believe that the criminal justice system should focus on the people who are violent and the people who are dangerous. I think we need to do a better job of differentiating between people, again, who are violent and dangerous and those who make mistakes. I believe that those people should be met by the full extent of the law, while the other people, they deserve a second chance or diversion. And we just need to do a better job of treating people like people, and I believe in justice for all of us, without exception.
Well, thank you for that. I see that you kind of got some great publicity on some of the things that you stated or during the Antoine Rose issue. Is that what drove you into wanting to run?
Not at all. I actually resigned from the county prior to the shooting. It just happened to be around the same time. But I can honestly speak with that.
Coincidental.
Coincidental, certainly. An unfortunate chain of events, but.
Okay. Well, There's, across this country, one of the things we've learned about the district attorney's office is, in the face of so many unfortunate shootings, the district attorney is still compliant upon working with the police departments to either get a conviction or not get a conviction. You want to respond to that, or how you see that as it relates to your candidacy?
I think if you look across the country, these police officer involved shootings, they've been happening since longer than I've been alive. It's unfortunate that one of the most recent and the most obviously nationally publicized was the incident with Antoine Rose. And in my humble opinion, I don't believe that case would have ever been charged had it not been the voices of the people here in Allegheny County rising up to display their anger and their displeasure of the system. I'm 41 years old, and I can recall numerous times here in Allegheny County where it seems to me that justice was perverted and it escaped marginalized communities. This is something that just didn't happen overnight. This has been an ongoing practice.
So how would you change things as a district attorney?
Equal accountability across the board. Whether you're a police officer, a fireman, a school teacher, if you break the law, you should be held to the same standard as everybody else. It sends a very poor message when people are treated differently solely because of their occupation.
Okay, so again, I'm going to go back to the original the question about the police. So if you're working on a case and you are dependent upon the cooperation of the police, what if they shut down on you, give you no cooperation? How do you deal with something like that?
If you were to have any level of success in this job, you have to work with the police.
Okay.
Because they bring the case to the district attorney's office
Right.
to investigate to determine whether or not there's enough evidence for the case to move forward.
Okay, and if you're saying that you will work with them, but
You have to work with. You can't move forward without engagement from law enforcement.
Okay, so what I'm hearing from some quarters of the community is just that the DA is working too closely with.
I understand your question now. I think in some instances it may be beneficial to have another agency or department launch that particular investigation because of the lack of sometimes transparency between the district attorney's office and the community. Because I'm sure many of you can recall other instances in the past where maybe a controversial incident may have occurred, and then we later hear that the decision has been made, but there was no communication with the community as to why those decisions were made, and the citizens are kind of left in the dark. So as an district attorney, I believe in full transparency, because you are to serve the people and you are to respect the wishes and the concerns of the people. You can't run that office from an ivory tower and make decisions based upon your own individual perspective. It has to be about the people. We've gotten away from that. This office belongs to the people. I'm not arrogant enough or naive to think that I have all the answers, because I don't. You have to engage the people.
Very good. This question comes from the audience. As a district attorney, how would you help with demanding more training for police with force, no force, and shoot, don't shoot?
More training is imperative. I think that the gentlemen who were previously, they touched on that. Right now, there's no uniformity amongst police departments. You go to one police department, they may do things one way. You go to a different one, they may do something completely different. While I can't force police officers to train, I believe that as a district attorney, that comes with much power. It's commonly referred to as the bully pulpit. So I think that office should be used to effectuate better training for police officers across the board. And in terms of the actual laws that are in place, while the district attorney is not a member of the legislative body, I think that office could be used to implement change in terms of the law. Because if you're the chief law enforcement officer in Allegheny County, you should be at the table. You should be part of those discussions when laws are being created. If you are in charge of dispensing justice here in Allegheny County, there's no reason why you shouldn't be at the table in Harrisburg, engaging our legislators to come up with these laws to make them more fair and more just for the people.
Thank you. Cash bonds for nonviolent offenses have been known to cost poor defendants jobs, housing, and even child custody rights. Though this is a magisterial decision, the DA's office can oppose or not ask for bond. Would you make that standard policy, or does that go by each case that needed to be handled individually?
While the magistrates do in fact make bond determinations, however, anybody that works in the criminal justice system knows that the district attorney's office has the final say. They pretty much side with whatever the district attorney's office position is in terms of bond positions. And I will say, working in the public defender's office, I've seen hundreds of citizens here in Allegheny County languishing in the jail for low-level, nonviolent, oftentimes victimless crimes because they don't have $100 to post a bond. It is a waste of time. It's a waste of resources. To give you an example, about a year ago, I represented a young man who was pulled over at a traffic stop. He had a small amount of marijuana in his pocket. He spent a week in jail and lost his job. So my question is, how are we any safer? How are we any better? How is that justice? It's not. It's an injustice. So as a next district attorney, I would take a stance. There are certain offenses that I don't think anybody should sit in jail for. For example, I just described a small amount of marijuana, and you spend a week in jail, that's a waste of time.
I agree. You said that the office should focus on dangerous and serious crimes.
Certainly.
As a district attorney in Texas recently made news by saying he would not prosecute any thefts of anything valued at less than $500. Is that something you would do?
I believe in diversion. What I mean by that, while we have diversionary courts here that divert people while they're already in the system, I believe that true diversion here in Allegheny County would be to divert those people before charges are ever levied. It would cut down on the caseloads.
Divert them where?
Divert them in a case such as you suggested, such as a theft case, make them pay the money in lieu of criminal charges before we even funnel them to the criminal justice system. A simple arrest can have consequences that will affect somebody the rest of their lives. Whether the case is dismissed or withdrawn, they still have to go through the process of getting an expungement and all the collateral consequences that come with that. So we need to be more mindful of how we process people through the system. We need to look at other jurisdictions such as what's happened in Texas. There's a whole program here in Allegheny County for juvenile offenders. It's a program where they, in lieu of charging young juvenile offenders with charges, they have funnel them through a system. That way they don't have to go through the rigor and the consequences of matriculating to the criminal justice system.
Let me ask you a different question. What's the benefit of, change of venue in court cases? Is there any value to that? Do you have any say of whether or not a particular case should be?
I believe sometimes it could be beneficial if it's a circumstance where a defense counsel or even the Commonwealth may feel like there may have been too much pre-trial exposure to a case and they don't feel like a client would have a fair shot. There are instances where it could be appropriate, not even at the common pleas court level or sometimes even at the magistrate level.
Was that appropriate in the Antoine Rose situation?
While I understand why the motion was made, but I don't believe that the jury, I don't think it would have been a hardship to find a juror here in Allegheny County to hear that case.
Very good. I think that's all we have for our district attorney candidate. At this particular time, we're going to move to the next segment, but before we do, let him offer his closing statement.
Yeah.
1 minute.
1 minute, thank you. 1 minute. May 21st, we have an opportunity to effectuate real change, and what I mean by that, if you look at the past 21 years here in Allegheny County, it's been business as usual, status quo, but that doesn't work for me. That doesn't work for me as a father and as a husband, and it shouldn't work for you either. If you want change, real hope, justice for all, without exception, I'd ask you to consider me to be the next district attorney of Allegheny County. I have the training, I have the experience, I have the vision, and I have the desire to move Allegheny County in the right direction because we deserve that much. Thank you.
We have some opposition to the candidacy of the Honorable Kieran Young, Democratic candidate for Pittsburgh City Council, District 9. And let's see, we have Bobby Wilson, who is a Democratic candidate for Pittsburgh City Council, District 1. Is that what we have? We have, oh, Mark Bradley chose to join us. What do you know about that?
Cutting through the traffic and expensive parking.
Ah, okay, well, fine. Just grab a seat up there, I'm not sure if there's... Well, thank you all. I think that's all of our, do we have any others that chose to show up at the last minute? That's it? Well, okay. Thank you all for being here. We will begin with our opening statements. It's 2 minutes each. We'll go right down the line here. We'll start with Mark Friendly and then conclude with Dr. Wilson at the end.
Thank you, Dons, and thank you folks for inviting me. My name is Mark Brentley, Senior Candidate for City Council that covers most of the north side communities. I am no stranger to local politics. I've been close to 30 years as a Democratic committeeman, 16 years, that's 4 four-year terms as an elected member of the Pittsburgh School Board, and over 30 years as a community activist in this city, fighting and creating a voice for those who have no voice in a lot of issues. I am simply running because we are tired of the feud. For years, the incumbent, Mrs. Harris, has constantly feuded with the mayor, and I've been in many fights before in the past, but we have to learn how to be able to disagree and not be disagreeable. And of course, the mayor's way of fighting back to her is he gets another guy to get in the race, and Grant Street finances him, and he gets in the race to fight her because he's fighting the mayor. When all those things happen, we lose out. And so I'm hoping to be the voice of reason. I'm hoping for folks to engage me and to elect me so that we can put this feud behind us and put the residents of District 1 first in the city of Pittsburgh. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you.
Hello. First of all, thank you for having us. It's certainly a privilege to be here. I'm Reverend Ricky Burgess. I'm a member of Pittsburgh City Council representing Council District 9, which is the eastern part of our city. I really believe in working together, and by working together, we can make our city not a city for some, but a city for all. There are 3 things that I have been working to do and will continue to work to do if fortunate enough to be reelected. First of all, by working together, we make our city safer. We have instituted a variety of programs that have made our city safer. This is the lowest violent crime we've had in our city in the last decade, and the police chief has been specifically linked it to the programs that we initiated, including ShotSpotter, Group Violence Initiative, Marital Lethality Assessment Model. Right now we're doing the Stop the Violence Initiative. Second of all, by working together, we make our communities safer. We have been fortunate enough to follow Doris Carson Williams' leadership, and we've been able to use the Housing Authority as a tool to begin to rebuild African American neighborhoods from areas of isolated poverty into mixed income stable community. We've been able to usher in somewhere close to 750 units of housing in my council district, probably 2,000 units across the city. I used to chair the Housing Authority, and recently in Homewood, the mayor announced the new plan to rebuild Homewood Avenue and to take that business district and put mixed income, mixed use development. And then third of all, I believe by working together, we make our citizens more secure. I have fought and led a fight on council for Fight for 15. I believe that everyone deserves a living wage. I also believe everyone deserves health insurance. And so I worked with the healthcare workers to get UPMC and to give concessions. We also did the same thing with Giant Eagle for the food service workers. And then we've raised the Summer Youth Employment Program from $500,000 to $2.5 million in last year. And this year, every single kid in the city who applied for a summer job was eligible. Every kid received a job. We're proud of that record, and we hope to continue that work on behalf of all of us.
Good evening. I'm Kieran Young, and I'm honored to be here with the African American Chamber of Commerce, to which I believe my father is a founding member. My father, Andre, is a longtime business owner here in downtown and around the region, and we're very supportive of the African American Chamber as a family, and I believe that it is instrumental in pushing African Americans forward in order to get contracts, in order to advocate for African Americans to get a bigger piece of the pie in regards to economic development. That leads me to the reason why I'm running. I'm running to represent the 9th Council District here in the city of Pittsburgh, and I'm running to get African Americans who live in the 9th Council District a bigger piece of the pie economically. We've been systematically excluded from housing development as well as business development, as well as contracts here in the county, and I am running to be an advocate to make sure that African American business owners and minority business owners around the county and around the region are given the same opportunity that folks in the South Hills are given. I'm really running to be a dedicated representative of the 9th Council District and to serve the 9th Council District as a full-time representative, focusing on constituent service. I'm pledging to hold regular town halls in the district and meet with the residents to discuss the issues that come up, and also to meet with people that are looking to get contracts and to meet with people who are looking to become minority contractors or minorities who are big enough to take the majority of the contract. We want to advocate for them to be able to get those contracts as well. I really believe that the way we bring minorities up the economic ladder here in Allegheny County is by giving people access to contracts so that they can build businesses that they can then pass down to their families.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me today. My name is Bobby Wilson. I'm running for City Council in District 1. That's Pittsburgh's North Side. I volunteer my time as the president of my own community group. I'm also on the North Side Leadership Conference Board, where we're working with all of our neighborhoods. But more importantly, I'm raising my kids on the same block that I grew up on. And I stay there because I know what the North Side has given me in terms of a way to shape my character. Some of the North Side institutions, or I benefited from North Side institutions like Sarah Hines House and Northview Heights Elementary School. I also watched my father load tractor trailer trucks in the Strip District, working as a Teamster, and he came home and fixed up our house, make it more livable, but then he also went off and went to night school and became an engineer. And then there were some other times where my mom had to go off and get out of work, and she was able to find better work as an SEIU usher for the Civic Arena at the time. So I've seen the ups and downs of the North Side as well, and I chose to stay there, and I had an opportunity to leave, but I didn't. But I see new families moving in, they see these opportunities, and we just need to make sure there still remains a place for everyone. So I plan to work hard for high quality affordable housing for individuals on the North Side. Also, a big issue is with all these manufacturing jobs that have left, we got to make sure that all the service industry jobs are being turned into good union paying jobs. Because I know that working for a union, you get access to good quality affordable health care and also a family sustaining wage. So those are the issues I plan to work for.
Thank you. I'm going to try to keep this flowing, so I don't want to restrict everybody to, any special time limits. Make it conversational or as free-flowing as possible. I will direct a question to each one of you, and all of you can respond as you go along. I'm going to start with Councilman Ricky Burgess. I have a problem with this. You said you support a living wage. I don't know what that means. Is that $15 an hour? Is that $20 an hour? What are we talking about? Are we talking about small businesses that can't afford the higher costs imposed upon? What is a living wage?
Well, I've a couple of times have tried to raise the living wage and the wages in our city by legislation. But right now, we're talking about $15 an hour. When we did the wage review study, and one of the members of the wage review study is sitting in the audience, it was just awful, the testimony from the healthcare workers. Some of them had worked in their hospitals for 15, 18 years and didn't make $15 an hour. And what really stunned me was that many of them could not bring their children to the same hospital they worked in because their health care coverage, the emergency room visit was $500. And that's the disgrace of a city where they're working for one of the largest institutions in this county, and they're working to make health care for other people, and their own children are denied care because of economics. And so we really believe it's important to raise wages for workers. I am a union member. I'm the only thing member of council who is a card-carrying union member. I'm a member of the AFT, so I strongly believe in unions. I believe in the right to bargain, and I believe that this is the birthplace of unions. So I believe in a higher wage, but starting right now, I believe $15 an hour is the minimum hourly wage to pay a worker in 2019.
All right, thank you. Anybody else? Go right on. Jump on in.
So I support a $15 minimum wage, but I also have some caveats. I don't think it should be done immediately. I think we should be talking about phasing it in over 4 or 5 years like they've done in the District of Columbia, Seattle, and other major metropolitan areas. I think if you do it immediately doubling the minimum wage will kill small businesses and it'll hurt minority-owned businesses especially. You have to give people the opportunity to plan ahead for a drastic increase in wages. But I would also support going forward after the 5 years, incremental increases to the minimum wage in order to keep up with inflation and the rising cost of goods.
Mr. Wilson, you want to say something on that one?
Yes, I think we should expect at least $15 an hour, and I plan to work to make sure that working with other, like a coalition, that would make that happen.
Is that a living wage? That's the question I want to know. What is a living wage?
Well, you know,
It was raised by
no,
the councilman, but he supports a living wage. I'm still kind of trying to hear what a living wage is, because I keep hearing all these varying dollar signs. I've heard $10.
yeah, I think if I can respond, I think you know, $18 an hour, and they have some kids, some children. I think that still puts them in a situation where they're still struggling. They may not be able to afford everything, even like a car. So I think, especially a single parent that would only make $18 an hour, still a struggle. So I think that's why I say at least 15. And I plan to use the office to try and maximize that as much as possible.
So we'll weigh in, Mr. Bruntley.
I'll just say that I do support it, and but once again, for the folks that I am advocating for and representing, they would be happy with just a job, period. Conditions are so bad here where it's extremely difficult for some, if not most folks, to even get a basic job. And if you're lucky enough to get a job, you can't afford the medical coverage. And if you have medical coverage, then you're the last one to be fired. So I'm fighting for a little bit more, but in general, I do support a livable wage income for all workers.
All right, thank you very much for your response on those. Let me go to Mr. Wilson. Though the County Democratic Party has endorsed Councilwoman Harris, Mayor Peduto has personally endorsed you. Now, I'm just curious, has that translated into some funding for you or other advantages exclusive of some of the other candidates that are running?
I'm happy to have the support, and you know, I think that only turns into someone that is looking for a partner on the north side. And you know, I think everyone who lives in the district realizes how hard we're working for their vote. And we're running a campaign that's really grassroots. We're getting new volunteers every day. People are excited for the change.
All right. Mr. Brentman, would you like to respond to that?
Yes, it's clear that there is no law against the chief executive officer of this city to endorse or get involved with the council seat. But the question is it good for Pittsburgh? Is it good for democracy when you have the mayor with his deep pockets and his friends on Grand Street? By the way, I consider myself a friend of the mayor. We just disagree on this political maneuver here. But is it fair and is it good for democracy when the mayor can come into a community election and simply put his finger on the scale for one particular person to make sure that he gets that person on council. If not, a year, maybe 2 years ago, there was a special election to fill one of the vacancies there. It was reported in the newspaper that they spent close to, if not over, $100,000 for a council seat that pays $68,000. Here's the question. These council seats were meant for you and I, community folks. When I fought to get the bi-district seat process years ago, the purpose was for individuals who were active and concerned in their community would be able to take $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, put it together, run a decent neighborhood-based campaign. Well, with the mayor's involvement now, it's almost the purchasing of a seat. And I say, yes, you have the money, yes, you can do it, but who loses at the end? And once again, that entire process has been taken away from us. And so what are the benefits when the mayor gets involved? There's no questions. You get bragging rights, you get bodies, you get free labor, you get money. Just last week, beautiful young lady knocked on my door. Hey, I'm with, I don't know if it's SEIU, I think. Oh, okay, we're here to campaign for Bobby Wilson. Didn't know who I was. But we're here, he's the best candidate, the mayor supports him, et cetera, et cetera. I said, ma'am, do you know who I am? And I introduced myself to her. And I said, do you know that I've worked over 32 years as an employee of the city of Pittsburgh? No, I didn't, Mr. Brennan. Do you know that I spent most of my years as a member of 1058 Union and also 2037 Foreman's Union? So in other words, a percentage of my union dues is taken out to create a political action fund that will eventually end up in some of my opponents' campaign because it's labor. And so how do you think I feel? And so there are benefits when the mayor gets involved. They did not open the process up. They did not allow everybody interview or come forward. And if not, one of the basic things all unions should consider adopting, and that is before you come out and heavy-hand in a particular race, you should check to see if one of the opponents are union members and been union members for years. That would be basic. The second thing that they should consider amending into their process would be that sometimes you can take a no involvement position in a particular race so that you won't anger some of us, because I'm angry. I can spend all of my time volunteering and being a member of this union. I've actually served as a safety representative for 1058 about 15 years ago. I believe in unions. But to not have the opportunity to voice my opinion is a little disappointing. And disappointing in the chief executive officer of the city as well.
Thank you. Gentlemen, you care to respond to that question there?
Yes. I filed my financial reports. My opponent did not. It's clear that I do not have a lot of money in my campaign. And we are running a very grassroots campaign. And whenever he brings up the Service Workers Union, these are people that are taking 2 buses to come and door knock for me. When we talk about who I'm going to be working for, it's those people. Because those are the people that I've talked to, and I know what they've been through, and what they know what it's like to go from working $10 an hour to making $18 an hour with benefits. So I'm not going to sit here and act like I'm running some big campaign with all this money, because I'm not.
Thank you. I've got a question that came from the audience here, and I'm going to direct this to the young man, the millennial in the group here. What is your position on gun violence, the right to bear arms, and how this impacts the minority population in Pittsburgh and Allegheny County?
So, to parse your question out, I support the Second Amendment and the right to bear arms. I also think that gun violence is a huge problem, and the main problem is illegal guns and handgun violence. So I believe that we should be focused on addressing handguns and illegal guns that are proliferating around the community, especially those lost and stolen guns that come in from the suburbs into Homewood and the east end of the city of Pittsburgh. Guns are an issue. I just don't believe that assault weapons, and particularly the mayor's assault weapons ban, are great for the African American community. I don't think 90 days in jail and a $1,000 fine is something that we should be looking at doing, especially when we already know the issues that revolve around policing and over-policing in African American communities. I just think that we should be looking at solving the problem on a statewide level Because if it's legal in Baldwin, if it's legal in Wilkinsburg, if it's legal in Fox Chapel, those people can just easily drive those weapons into the city. I believe we need to focus on actually solving the real problem, which is handgun violence, which 95% of the homicides that happen in the 9th Council District and in the city of Pittsburgh are done with handguns. I believe we have to focus on that, as well as lost and stolen weapons. And assault weapons are a small fraction of the homicides that happen here in the city of Pittsburgh. And if you're really focused on addressing the issue of handgun violence in the Black community, you need to look at handguns, and you really need to look at lost and stolen guns especially.
Anybody else? Open it up.
I would just respond to a couple of weeks ago, City Council had a very heated conversation around gun law that they were passing. And I've said before, when a reporter called me, if I were on council at the time, I would have clearly voted yes for it, understanding that that vote is symbolic. It was meaningless because council can't change that rule. You got to go to Harrisburg. And so it makes good for good press, but getting things done would not, kick the ball down the corner anymore. But what I would have advocated for and fought for is an amendment to that bill that would say immediately after that vote that we would convene a meeting in council chambers with the Allegheny County state delegations, all of our state reps, and then take that issue, put it in their lap and say, here's how we feel, take this issue, run with it and change or do whatever you have to do, because that's where it begins. But I would have voted because it would have at least shown for very few times something like that council can stand united and stand together. So I would have supported the legislation.
You care to respond, Councilman?
So, most of you know I've spent my entire career fighting against gun violence. It is the reason I ran for council. My aunt was murdered. My mother had a nervous breakdown from which she never recovered because of that murder. My mother-in-law was shot and killed at her place of business. My grandfather was shot and killed. My father-in-law was shot. My brother-in-law spent 24 years in the penitentiary because he used a gun to kill somebody. One of the sons I'm raising, as my son, is actually his son because he was in the penitentiary. I've lost cousins, I've lost church members, I've lost since I've been in office. There's been 500 homicides in the city. It's over 500 homicides in the city of Pittsburgh. 75% of them are African American, 80% of them have been through handguns. And so I have tried to do everything within my power to eliminate this threat. That's why we brought the Group Violence Initiative program in. That's why we brought in ShotSpotter, which was an instantaneous gunshot detection system. And I proudly stood with the mayor to not only stand with the bills that get the most publicity, which was the ban on assault rifles. What in the world do we need to hold with the people with AR-14s and AK-47s? That's insanity. There's 300 million guns in the United States. There's enough guns to arm every single man, woman, and child. We do not need more guns in homes. It's insane to think that we do. And then more than that, the fourth piece of legislation was to increase money for the Group Violence Initiative programs, which is a prevention programs that actually uses ex-gang members who are involved in the justice system to go reach out to young brothers to keep them from banging and slinging. And so, but gun violence is a symbol of a bigger problem. And the bigger problem we have is lack of opportunity. Our people in the African American community are living in concentrated poverty without access to jobs, without clean, decent, affordable housing, without jobs, without amenities in their community, without proper schools and education. And what I've learned is you must attack all these problems simultaneously at the same time in scale. And so I am committed to not only stopping gun violence in terms of preventing it from intervening when it occurs, but we need to change the structure of Pittsburgh so that they have hope and that the communities are mixed income, stable, and transformed so they will have hope for tomorrow and move away from illegal activities, including gun violence and drugs and crime and violence.
Well,
Mr. Wilson, do you have a comment on what was just discussed?
I support the gun measure. These are weapons that are made to pierce armor, and they have no place in Pittsburgh. Also, I plan to be a connector between the law enforcement and struggling communities. We have to make sure that the officers are doing more than just responding to 911 calls. We have to make sure that they're actually in our communities, building these relationships, doing more community policing. So it's going to, more safer communities extends further out than just gun bans.
All right, thank you. Well, let's see. I guess we've covered some things here, but I'm going to go back to something that.
I just wanted to
Go ahead.
respond quickly. There were some things that was just mentioned earlier, and I just wanted to clarify. It was also mentioned about the importance of filing your financial report. The report isn't due until tomorrow. That's a major report from the city. Also, we should be very, very aware when people campaign and often say, I'm grassroots, because that is to suggest that I'm with you, I'm down with the issues, I'm here. That is not the case all the time. And then finally, we talk about finances, the importance of getting union support. Keep an eye on literature, the mailings, and the people who work polls. In the first district, there are 39 polls at the very minimum. That's $100 a poll, if not $200 a poll, that you have to pay individuals. The signage, the messaging, and the mailings, these things cost money, and that money doesn't just drop out of the sky. But when we're talking about financing, one of the things that really disturbs me, coming from the chief executive officer of this city, is that many of you are aware that I've spent over 33 years as a city employee, but as of January, I've been mysteriously terminated. And so as of January, I have not been able to pull one paycheck to run my campaign. And those of you who've been in campaigns before, you know that African Americans historically have a very difficult time raising the kind of dollars that white candidates run. So most of the time when we run, we take money from our household or from our jobs. Well, that was removed from me as of January. Thank God for Mr. Bob Booter from the Tribune Review. March the 2nd, you have your phones, you Google it, read the article. He was able to touch on it a little, but how dare the chief executive officer of the city to get personally involved in a campaign just to make sure that he controls who sits on council. We should all be angry about that, not for me, but because it's just a terrible way to operate in what's supposed to be a democracy.
So you're saying that the mayor himself was behind you losing your...
I'm saying that I'm a city employee and I've mysteriously been charged with insubordination. Normally, if I was charged with that, that usually gets you a verbal warning. Okay, fine, maybe a day. But to jump right to the 5th level of discipline, and that's 5 days pending termination, which I was terminated, and then they said, if you want your job back, you write us a letter. I wrote the letter, and then they said, well, okay, fine, we'll give you your job back. We'll only give you your job back if you will sign this agreement. The agreement is what's used when individuals have committed a violent crime, or if you're an alcoholic, or if you have substance abuse. I'm none of that. All black people ain't like that. But to get my job back, I had to sign it. I refused. Then they said, okay, well, I went to the Civil Service Commission, filed a complaint with the Civil Service Commission. They had my hearing on the 14th of March. The 27th, they came with a decision, which was rare. They called me, said they'd given me something in writing. Mr. Brennan, the commission made a decision. This is around 2 o'clock in the afternoon. We agreed to give you your job back with full back pay and fully reinstated if you sign this agreement. And I said, I am not an alcoholic. I'm not a drug. I have not hit, hurt, nor harmed anyone. Mr. Brentley, if you want your job, sign this agreement. And I said, you know what, I got a family. I got to work. We also want you to sign it by 4 o'clock tomorrow, the next day. So I said, you mean I don't have an opportunity to take it, let an attorney take a look at it? They said, if you want your job, get down there and sign by 4. I went down there and I signed by 4. I was angry. And right above my signature, I said, I am signing this in duress. When they sent the response back a couple of days later in writing, the final sentence said, because you signed in duress, we take back what we offered. you are now terminated immediately. Where does that operate in a democracy? We're supposed to be a democratic city council, supposed to be a democratic mayor. And if anybody's interested in seeing this information, let me know. I have all the documentation. I am still stunned today that this thing can operate.
Thank you very much for that elaboration on that. I'm going to turn once again to Mr. Young. You are on record, or at least I've read, where you have said Mr. Burgess's policies are pay to play. Could you elaborate on that? And furthermore, you've also said the city systematically disenfranchises African Americans through plantation politics. Could you give us some examples? And what would you do to change that? So I want to hear on both of those counts.
Okay, so the plantation politics comment is a reference to the fact that the mayor is putting his hands into local government races. Like Mr. Brentley stated previously, I don't think that elected officials should be choosing politicians, especially in black communities. I think that they should be working with whoever gets elected, whoever the community sends forth as a representative, not working to make sure that any black elected official that comes out of the community is a rubber stamp for their agenda. And to your other question, what was that about pay to play?
Pay to play, yeah, that's your word.
Well, listen, I've spent a lot of time, working in politics and going through people's finance reports. Whenever I go through someone's finance reports, and every developer that is doing work in the community gave money to a certain campaign or gave money to the council person and the mayor, and you wonder why they're doing all the work in the community, I think that's pretty cut and dry, pay to play politics. I don't.
You have evidence of those?
Yeah, you can look at people's finance reports going back as far as 2015. I have lots of evidence.
Well, Councilman, you can choose to respond to any of that.
So, we have helped usher in development into African American communities that have not been there in the last 50 years. One of it, and we are proud that the largest contract ever given to a minority was given during our tenure at the Housing Authority. And we have the highest participation of minority and women enterprise companies in our contracts in the history of the city. And so we're real proud that African Americans are participating in rebuilding their own communities. And so I think that in the 12 years we've been in office, we've built, 350 units in Garfield. We've built we're in the midst of building 400 in Walmart. We're building 150 in Homewood, excluding the probably 100 we're going to do on Hamilton Avenue. Every part of our district has seen redevelopment occur. We have something called the HELP Initiative, which is a systematic approach to protecting residents so that as we do development activity and the residents are provided a process where their homes and their participation is valued and protected. In fact, in Walmart, we gave homeowners grants, not loans, we gave them grants. Homeowners grants. When we built new development, we gave grants to existing homeowners so they could repair their house, they could repair their roof or get furnaces so they could stay in their neighborhoods. I do understand that there are still people in my community who are in pain. And so because they're in pain, they often will say things that are untrue. But that's okay. That's part of the job of helping rebuild the community is to help everybody in the community. And so I tend to look forward to rebuilding communities, trying to give people full-time employment, those who need employment, and transform communities from pockets of isolated poverty into mixed income communities. I am transparent about my work. I'm very proud of the work that we've done over the last 3 terms. We look forward to the 4th term because we can multiply. We can, if you go and look at Broad Street, look at the new houses, the new families moving in to those homes on Broad Street, or the new development on Hamilton Avenue, or the low rise that has the first coffee shop in Homewood. I think we can do even more things moving forward and have a lot more economic. I think the housing, again, when I say Doris Carson Williams, and following in her footsteps, she really was the force behind the Housing Authority, providing the highest level of minority participation in contracts of any city employee, a city authority. And I've simply continued in that venue. We try to demand that the city, and I hit start on Tuesday, we will release a new equity and diversity initiative on Tuesday. We're going to be naming the city an all-in city. We will be demanding that and again, it'll come out on Tuesday, we'll be demanding that directors set diversity goals. We will tie it to their budget address, their budget request, so in the future years, we will be able to monitor whether or not they've actually made the city more diverse. We will, we hired a council diversity policy analyst for the first time ever. And so we are looking forward to a city that practices what it preaches, which is being more diverse, because the idea is, and we're going to get better as a community, all aspects of our community must get better, but particularly we must invest in African American entrepreneurs. We must give them, and that's why the new businesses on Homewood Avenue will help hopefully build out storefronts so that you have black
I
entrepreneurs.
think Mr. Young wants to respond to
Sure.
some of what you said.
So, Mr. Burgess brought up the Hamilton Avenue, which is, I believe, being done by Keith Keys, right? Is Keith Keys the only minority that you can find that can do construction or development here? I mean, because he's from Cincinnati. He's not actually from our community, so I would like to see people from the community actually doing the work in the community. Second of all, if you go up to that site on Hamilton Avenue, I ain't seen a single black person up there working yet. So where are the people actually from the community who are in need of jobs, who can do this building work? They're not there because we have a developer from Cincinnati doing all the work in the 9th Council District, and he's using illegal immigrant labor to do it, and he's cutting us out. I'm pretty upset about that, and the fact that he comes up here and continuously says, I got all these minorities that are getting contracts. It's one person from Cincinnati.
So he's from Garfield, and with the Peabody, he can play with the Peabody football team. That's first of all. Second of all, and Dave's a girl who lives around the corner from me, Carol Nutley, so I've known him about him for many years. Second of all, Mike Light is also an African-American developer that is doing in my council district. He's rebuilding the old Leamington home. The old Leamington home is being built to senior housing, and the Leamington Health Center, Lincoln Leamington Health Center is moving up into that facility. So we have a variety of developers who are African-American participating. Also, the CEO now of McCormick Barron's is now an African-American, even though McCormick Barron's is not an African-American firm. Their chief operating officer is Vince.
Where is McCormick Barron Salazar based?
In St. Louis.
Okay, so you're cutting people in from outside of our community. Where are the people that could do the work from our community?
Well, Amacello has just bought Homewood, Bethesda Homes, and they are redoing, and it's led by African American. They're redoing homes. They're rebuilding about 100 homes in Homewood. So there are in order to do this, really, you need multiple developers. You need Homewood is 60% vacant. Let's just use Homewood as or Larmer. It doesn't matter, either one. The vacancy is so high, right? No one developer can do it all. What you really want, and it's funny, when I first came to council, there was no African American developers getting any of the jobs at all. And now, after 12 years, that we brought African American developers to come in to the city to do jobs, now the argument is, well, they're not from Pittsburgh. Well, and I think the argument really is, you want quality people doing quality work to rebuild these communities and to transform them from isolated communities into I grew up in Homewood, right? I've been a pastor in Homewood for 35 years. Homewood, when I grew up, was a mixed income neighborhood. You remember how they were. It had grocery stores, it had movie theaters. That's how it has to be again. It cannot be just poor people. You have to rebuild these communities, these African American communities. And so I'm proud of the work we've done. I'm proud of and my campaign stuff. I filed. I won't mention other candidates in their locker filing. You can find out yourself. I look at the website as to who files and who doesn't. I think I'm the only one on my. I think I'm the only one.
I want to address that. I filed my reports with the county, where you're supposed to, because the law that you guys enacted on city council is not just. It's in violation of the state law. The county law, you file your PAC reports with the county. The city has no grounds to do that, and you know it. You're preempted from doing it because it's in direct conflict with the state law. So you can go and say, I'm the only person who files my reports if I want to. I file with the county, bro.
I have a question I want to direct to everybody here, because across the city, county, one of the things we're concerned with is affordable housing, lack of affordable housing, and I would say gentrification of key neighborhoods to the exclusion of some of us, namely the African American community. There are nice fancy words like diversification and other things like that are thrown out. But the reality is we're seeing a disappearing, declining African American community. Do you want to respond to that? Anybody?
So part of the reason that you're seeing a decline in the African American community is a lack of opportunity for younger African Americans. A lot of my friends and very close people that I've been close with through high school have gotten their education and they up and moved to New York, they up and moved to Philadelphia, they moved to Baltimore, because there's a whole lot more business opportunity there for people who look like us. There's a whole lot more political opportunity in Charlotte and on these coastal cities, and that's why we're losing African Americans. There's also a better opportunity for home ownership, and it's easier for an African American to actually buy a home. So if we want to start to retain some of the younger African Americans that we are losing, we need to make sure that we have homes that are ready for them to buy, and also jobs that pay what they would in other cities, and opportunity economically, as in contracts with the city and the county to help build African American businesses. These things are all available in other cities, in other major metropolitan areas, and they just don't seem to be available to young people, especially here, and that's why you continue to lose African Americans.
Mr. Wilson, you want to respond to that?
Yeah, I believe we have to use all the tools to make sure that people can stay where they are. I think there's a multiple tools we can use. Low-income housing tax credits, I think, is one. So I'm going to work with the state center to make sure there's that happening on the north side. But also the Housing Opportunity Fund, it really needs to be funded twice what it is right now to solve it faster, and really include larger home ownership programs. So especially for communities that are more rent and not as much home ownership, so we got to make sure that we work with the home ownership. So a lot of our streets on the north side are really, street by street. We have a good street, we have a bad street. What I mean by bad street is there might be one that has like 4 abandoned houses in a row, and when I look at those abandoned houses, I see that speaks to people who need better housing, but also for our seniors, that's usually their houses, sometimes their only investment, and so we need to change those issues.
Thank you. Mr. Bradley, you want to comment on that, and then I'll close out with the Councilman.
Yes, I would also want to point out that about 2 weeks ago, I had an opportunity at one of the senior citizen high-rise meetings that I've been having. A young man walked through the door. It took a couple of minutes. He had some walkers coming through the door. And so when I told him that I'm an advocate for affordable housing and gave a few examples, he raised his hand and he corrected me. He said, listen, Mr. Brentley, the issue is not affordable housing. For us, it's affordable, accessible housing. He said with some of the new developers, some aren't building as many handicap accessible units in their buildings. The doorways are not open up enough. The curves aren't cut in certain areas. He said, we got an issue too. We're fighting this administration too, but we have a right. And so from that point on, I thanked him because he was able to also help me to learn and understand the process. But you have to tell me, because if there was, I certainly missed it. If everybody's so concerned about affordable housing, tell me the date and the time that there was a movement on city council where they stopped and said, Mayor, enough is enough. We're tired of the demonstrations and the protests throughout the city of people being forced out, most of them are people of color. Who's there to force this mayor to stop? And actually, there's really nobody. That's why he works hard to purchase leadership to get on council, and then he gets his agenda through. The only problem with his agenda, he wants to make this city an all-white city, or a city that if you ain't got millions and millions of bucks in your bank account, you just may not be able to live in the community. A young lady told me at a meeting that I said, she said, you know, Mr. Brentley, I can work in the city, but I just can't afford to live here. And that's terrible. She was talking about 2 and 3 generations of her family that lived in a particular area. Where's the voice? When are we going to stand up? And when will we put something in place that will clearly say that, hey, we're putting up a banner, this city is welcoming and we're opening it up to everyone, regardless of your income?
I was born and raised in Homewood. I pastored a church 1 block from where I was born and raised. I met my wife in the 1st grade in a Homewood school. I lived 3 blocks from the house that I was raised in. I teach at a college, and one of my classes is at community college in Homewood, 2 blocks from where I was born and raised. I've spent, and I represent that area on council. I've been around that area my whole life. And so I ran for council for really 2 reasons. One, I said I would stop the violence. The second of all, I said I would try to bring economic development to rebuild African American communities. I am proud to partner with the Pittsburgh Black elected officials. If you read their report, the Peace and Justice report, part of what I do with them is to support and advocate and lead in housing development. And that report talks about the need to rebuild traditional African American communities. Now, how do you do that? Well, I was blessed that I had someone give money when Penn Plaza happened and those residents were dislocated. It sent me into conviction that this had to stop. And so we created a model called the HELP Initiative. It has its own website, HELPPGH.org. It's a 5-step approach, which is the approach in my community, and I think is going to become the approach to all the African American communities in Pittsburgh. It follows a specific 5-step process. Step number 1 is to create collaboration. That means to get all stakeholders on the same page. Second of all, do a comprehensive community plan and put the hands of that plan in the community's hands themselves, so they become the people and the deciders of what happens in their own community. Third of all, you bring capacity into local organizations so that local nonprofits in those communities can participate when development occurs. They can also lead in development activities such as OBB in Homewood, which is building houses itself. It's building its own houses and selling them themselves because they have capacity. Then fourth, you raise capital to do large scale and small scale development using all the available tools, whether it's tax credits, whether it's the land bank, which I'm chair of, whether it is private equity to rebuild these houses. And then finally, you oversee the construction and make sure that it's equitable. That's how you rebuild these communities, and we are actually doing that. I mentioned Penn Plaza. Right now, the URA has an RFP to build 2 buildings on Beatty Street, right across the street from Penn Plaza. We hope to build somewhere around 150 to 200 new units of housing. The mayor and I promised that those people, they'll get first preference to this new housing. We promised those residents they would be able to come back to the core of East Liberty. And in building, in the releasing of the RFP and the commitment to building this new housing units, we are keeping that promise. It's real important. Now, a lot of the destruction in East Liberty happened before I became council person. But since I've been council person, I'm very, very proud of maintaining affordable housing in East Liberty, of building new affordable housing in Homewood, in Larimer, in parts of my council district that haven't seen development in 50 years. It's not about housing. Housing won't do it alone. You have to do all of it at the same time. What I've learned is everybody's right. Everybody who says you need this to rebuild the Black community, everybody's right. Yes, you need more housing, you're right. Yes, you need jobs, yes, you're right. Yes, you need lower criminal behavior, yes, you're right. Yes, you need better job training and drug rehab, you're right. But no one thing will do it. But what you have to do is you have to do all these things at once and at scale. The most expensive of these is housing. So when you do these interventions, housing is always one of those multiple interventions.
Thank you.
And you use it to rebuild these communities.
We're going to close out with our 1-minute closing statements. We'll start with Mr. Wilson and come this way. 1 minute. And Sean, 1 minute, sir. Closing statement.
All right. Thanks for having me tonight. I really appreciate everyone coming around. And listening to us talk about the issues that's going to face the city of Pittsburgh now and also in the future. As a lifelong Northsider, it's important for me to stand up and realize that we've had our leadership has voted against measures that would fund the Housing Opportunity Fund and also provide workers with sick pay. 5 days of sick pay. So I think that's really the driving force of how we need to, number one, put working families first, but also we need to get more of our fair share. So on the north side, there's a lot of parts that are being left behind, like other parts of the city, but I want to see more in action. And I want to see more drive to actually make that happen. So better coalitions and better partnerships. I plan to work for that.
Thank you. Mr. Young?
So I'm Kieran Young, and I'm running for City Council to provide better services to the constituents of the 9th Council District. I'm a lifelong East Side resident, a graduate of Peabody High School, and when I got a phone call that members of the community were looking for somebody to run for City Council because they felt that they weren't getting enough from the city and they weren't getting enough from the mayor in particular, and they honored me by giving me that call, I stepped up, and I am trying to provide a new vision, a new leadership, and a new direction for the people of the 9th Council District. I really believe that it's now or never for the folks of the 9th Council District, and if you do not vote for a new city council person, you will more than likely be displaced from your community. I think that it's not just about displacement in housing, but it's also about the exclusion from the economic development and the jobs in the region. And as a council person, I would fight to make sure that people from the 9th Council District, first and foremost, had opportunity to be a part of those jobs and a part of that economic development. I'm going to put the people of the 9th Council District first and nobody else. So if you could vote for me on May 21st. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman?
I want to thank the African American Chamber of Commerce for this opportunity. My friend and brother, Bobby Abday, of course, was one of its founders, and we've known about it and been a cheerleader of the organization. Grace, it plays a vital part in providing leadership and resources to the African American community. Also, I'm very grateful for the leadership of you, Mr. Dawson. Thank you for moderating this. As you know, I'm very grateful for your family and for your leadership, and have admired you for a very long time. I say that both publicly and privately. I'm just grateful for the opportunity to serve. I do hope to win re-election, but that's not what I asked you for today. I asked you two things, really. Those who are here, just pray for me. If you can, pray for me and that I stay strong in doing the right thing for our city. And then second of all, pray that we can move our city forward together. This does not work. The city, our communities are never going to get better unless the city gets better. We have to work together to lift all of Pittsburgh together comprehensively to make Pittsburgh a city for all, not a city for some.
Thank you. Mr. Brantley?
Yes, I would first say thank you so much to the Chambers for the opportunity to come before you today. Politics gets kind of boring, and so it's difficult to get folks involved and interested. So I say thank you for that. I am running for City Council for District 1. I'm not in this race because someone asked for me to get into it. I'm not in it just to stick around to piss the mayor off, excuse my expression. I'm here to continue to do the things that I've done on the school board, and that is to provide a voice for those who don't have a voice, to provide a pathway to success for those looking for work and can't find work, to the folks who got all the jobs. I can't do it alone, and I'm asking that all of you make sure that you find a way to get involved with my race. This race is much bigger than just me, so you have to find a way to get involved. And once again, thank you so much for the opportunity to be able to share my views with you. And I do have those documents and be more than willing to share if anybody is interested. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you, gentlemen. Give them all a hand.
And don't stop applauding because we have to say broad dog. Broad has been doing this since we started this over 12 years ago, and we appreciate you.
Thank you.
And we thank all of you as candidates. We encourage people to do the right thing, and doing the right thing is make sure you go out and vote. I appreciate all the candidates that have been here. We have some upcoming activities. I'm not going to bore you with all the details, but we've got an excellent fraud workshop that will be coming up. Our power breakfast will be here on May 23rd with the new E-Tran Midstream, the split-off company from EQT. They'll be here, Diana Charlotte. We have a big mixer that we're having on May 29th at Arnold's Tea Room on the north side. If you haven't been in it, it's really lovely to be there. And don't forget our golf clinic. We have a golf clinic on May 31st. All the materials are back here on the table. Take as many as you want. We don't want to take the paper back to the office, so help yourself. But thank you for being here. And several weeks ago, I did an op-ed for the Business Times. And if not now, then when? And if not you, then who? So stay involved, but please go out and vote. And thank you for being here.
All right. Appreciate it, thank you.
Thank you.